29th, 2005. I'm Jessica Clark, the Teresa Knack Germans from Russia History Fellow, and the coordinator for the Germans from Russia Oral History Project. It is a pleasure to visit with Leona in Gackle, North Dakota. Can you start by stating your full name?
Leona Klundt.
Okay. And what's your maiden name?
Miller.
Miller. What is your date of birth?
July the 5th, 1931.
And where were you born?
As far as I know, I was born on the farm
Okay.
south of Gackle.
Do you know if a midwife was present? Or
Yes.
a midwife was present?
No, I'm mistaken. It was a doctor.
Was it a doctor?
It was a Dr. Merkel.
Oh, okay.
He used to live here.
Do you know, this is just a curious question. I've never asked anybody this, but do you know about how much it would cost to have a doctor come out to deliver a baby back then?
No, I really don't have any idea, but I think a lot of them were paid with eggs and milk.
Okay, okay.
I mean, if it was a midwife.
Okay, yeah, because I never had asked that before.
Yeah.
I never thought about it.
Maybe a doctor would have taken some money, but
Okay.
a midwife usually just either did it for nothing or they paid her off with something else like meat or eggs.
Interesting. Okay. When you think back to your childhood, what is one of your first childhood memories?
Well,
First things you remember.
I can remember a lot of things, but I don't even know how old I was. I especially can remember when I stayed with my grandparents' camera at one time, and my aunts were at home yet too, the younger aunts, and my Aunt Pauline came and said to me something about, I'm going to catch you, you know, kind of, and then I stumbled over the chain that the dog was tied onto, and I fell on the corner steps.
Oh my goodness.
And I can remember, that's all I remember until I woke up and I was in Grandma's bed. And that was traumatic for me because it hurt so bad and my face was so swollen. And I can remember that. I couldn't have been much more than about 4, 5.
So did it knock you out then?
It must have,
Oh,
because I can't remember waking up until I was in Grandma's bed. And this happened outside.
So
And
did
just plain.
Did your grandma doctor up your
Oh,
face?
Grandma was very good at that. She could doctor almost anything. They put vinegar on my face, vinegar and water, to kind of absorb that black and blue mark and stuff.
Okay. And this was your grandma?
Camera. That's my mother's mother's mother.
Mother's mother. Okay. What type of woman was she when you think about it?
Oh, she was a sweet person. Yeah. And it seemed like whenever she had that 9 children, and whenever one of the 9 children had some mishap or sickness or something like that, Grandma was always the one to go and get them well.
So she was the caregiver?
Yeah, she was a caregiver. She was.
Were you close to your grandmother on that
Yes,
side then? You
yes.
saw her quite often?
Yeah, we could spend a lot of time with them because my mom had to go out the field and work
Okay.
like a man. She was the hired man.
How far did your grandparents live from the farm?
From us, I'd say, no, they lived on John Cameron's place and we lived on the farm south. I'd say about 11 miles.
Okay. So that was quite a long distance then back then.
But my folks had a car.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was easier to go and see them. What about your grandfather? Did you know him real well?
Oh, yeah, we knew him real well, too. I don't know, I wasn't as close to Grandpa as I was to Grandma, but he was a very staunch person. I mean, you better do what I say or else.
A German man?
Yes, German from Russia. And he was, it seemed like he had to be because he was in the Russian army.
Was he?
Yes, and he was an upper person. I don't know what his rank was, but he was an upper person. And so I think he had that in him, that he was giving orders and he wanted them done.
So did he serve in the Russian army and then like fulfill his time and then move to the United States?
I don't really know, because all I know is they left very fast,
Okay.
because they left mostly everything behind.
Oh.
And when they came, and Grandpa Camera was quite a wealthy person in Russia. And all they could take was their money, and clothes. They left everything behind. We even got some pictures from relatives that were still in Russia of his house. That it was still standing, and it was, they always had their house and then their chicken coop and their barn all in one.
Oh yeah, it was all connected.
And the roof, we'd call it shingles. I don't know what they had in Russia. They had a real nice design in them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but when he came to America, he just never really got going here. He was very homesick. I know my mother used to say that he'd sit on the steps and just cry sometimes for the homeland.
Missed his family
Yeah.
and friends.
And he just never really made much here in the United States. Oh, they didn't. They made a living. They weren't people living on county or anything like that, but they didn't have much.
Okay. Do you know what year they came to the United States?
Yes. In May of 1911.
1911.
Because my mother was born in 1910. Am I saying that right? I think so. And it was in the month of May when she was born, and she was 1 year old. I don't know exactly if it was on her birthday, but a cousin of mine, she looked it up in the Germans from Russia archives or something like that.
Okay.
And she's got the exact date. She's even got the ship name of the ship and everything that they came over. Yeah.
So did they land in Ellis Island?
Yes.
Is that where they went? Okay. And then did they take like a train to the Dakota Territory, or?
I imagine that's the only transportation that there was in those days.
Okay.
'Cause,
Interesting. What about your grandparents on the other side?
they both came from Russia, but they got married here in the United States.
Okay. Okay.
They got married in Richville, North Dakota.
Yeah.
And that was a little town south of Streator, between Streator and Napoleon.
Oh my goodness.
Because I've got their wedding certificate.
That's a treasure.
Yeah, it is.
Oh. So were you close to those grandparents?
Yeah,
as
we
well?
were too, because we only lived a half a mile away from them.
Oh, they were closer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
When you think about them, how would you describe your grandmother on that side?
Oh, Grandma was kind of she was a little tough. I mean, but Grandpa was a gentle person. He was really nice.
What were their names on that side?
Pete and Magdalena Miller.
Magdalena.
Uh-huh.
When you think about your grandparents, when you went to visit them, did they speak German in the home, or English, or just German?
Just German, until we grew up a little bit. Then our grandparents' cameras, they learned the English language first, it seems like.
Okay.
Because I don't remember when Grandma Miller started talking English, but she understood it.
She did understand.
She didn't understand, but just to talk it was hard for her.
Okay.
But I know whenever we'd come to visit them and we'd talk, and she'd say, you'd say it in German. Well, at that time I could talk German real well too, but now I can't anymore. I
Oh, you can't?
lost it. I can understand it, but I can't say it.
Kind of like you don't use it, you lose it.
Right, right.
Okay. On your Cameron side, how many children did your grandparents have?
9.
9.
I think they had more, but 2 died.
Okay.
But my grandpa Camera was married twice. His first wife died in Russia,
Oh.
and they had 3 little girls. Well, 2 of them came to America, but the one died when she was 3 months old. And then he remarried my grandmother, and then my mother was the first of that family.
Okay.
And then there was 2 little boys that died here in the United States.
Oh, do you know what they died from?
In childbirth, you know.
Childbirth.
Yeah, that's one.
That was pretty common back
Yeah.
then, it seems. Yeah. How about your grandma and grandpa Miller? How many children did they have?
Let me see. 3, 4, about 6. And my dad's brother died quite young with pneumonia. And one brother was killed by accidental gunshot wound. And a little girl died
Okay.
in childbirth again.
Childbirth again. Okay. Were you close to any of your aunts and uncles when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. Especially on the camera side. We were very close. It seemed like this aunt now that gave us all this stuff, she was more or less our sister instead of aunt. She was only 10 years older than us. She kind of grew up with us. And all the other aunts and uncles, too. And on the Miller side, too.
So did most of your aunts and uncles live around the street or area, or?
Most of them, yes. 3 aunts moved out to California on my mother's side. And we stayed in contact with them all the time and stuff. But
Were most of your family farmers then?
oh, yes. They were to start out with.
Okay.
I mean, after a few years, some of them went in other business. Or moved to town for jobs or something.
But they usually started out as farmers. Okay. How about cousins? Did you have a lot of cousins when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. We had, in fact, and I'm in contact with all my cousins on both sides. I mean, on my dad's side, there was just his brother and sister and their kids. We just stay in touch. We have family reunions. And in fact, the Miller side has one every year around January.
Really?
Because our Grandma Miller started out with having all the grandchildren coming to her house on New Year's Day evening. Not New Year's Eve. New Year's Day in the evening.
Okay.
And then we kept it up. Even after Grandma has gone already.
Oh my goodness. That's a great family tradition.
Yeah. That's been going for at least a good 45 years or so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's just wonderful. When you think back to your mom, what type of woman was she?
Oh, Mom was a strong person. She had us kids. There was 7 kids that were born when she was 27 was her last baby. Ellis and I had a sister that was 10 and a half months older than me that passed away. Then I'm 10 and a half months older than Ellis.
I noticed that you guys were really close in age.
And that's the way we were born. Norman, yeah, we're one after another.
Oh my goodness.
And at 27, my mother finally had the last baby. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. When was your mother born?
In 1910
1910?
in Russia.
In Russia? Okay. Was your mom a very affectionate person? Would she show a lot of affection, or?
Well, we knew that she loved us, but she wasn't one to hug.
Okay.
You know, she didn't. That's one thing we never did much at home. Was hugging each other. We do more so now.
Changing times.
Yeah.
Okay. When you think back to your dad, what type of person was he?
Well, Dad, he was a good, he was a, how I should say, a friendly person. Seemed like wherever he was, he had somebody to talk to. He knew everybody. And as far as working is concerned, he worked when he worked. But then, otherwise, it depended a lot on us kids and my mother.
Okay. affectionate?
No,
No?
him neither.
Okay. When was he born?
In 1908. No, 1907. I said that
1907?
wrong.
Okay. And where was he born at?
I really don't know, but I think on the farm.
On the farm?
Yeah,
Okay.
the home place.
Okay. When you think about your parents, who would you say was the strict one? The one that made the
My
rules?
mother.
Your mom?
My mother, if there was any punishment to give, it was Mom. Never Dad. I can't ever remember him laying a hand on me.
Really?
You know, like spanking.
Yeah.
But he had cruel words.
You knew when he was mad?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. When you think about them as a couple, would you say your parents had a good marriage? They worked well together, or?
No, I think I would have to say not.
Okay. Okay.
Because Dad drank quite a bit.
Oh.
And then Mom was stuck with the work and with us, you know.
Was that a common thing back then to have a lot of alcohol?
Yeah, I think so. Because my grandparents on my dad's side now, they always had some alcohol and it seemed like that was the first thing they offered their visitors. Say you come to my house and sit a while instead of me coughing.
You give a beer or something?
No, not beer, usually whiskey.
Whiskey? Ooh,
Yeah.
Okay.
It was usually something like that they
The
had.
liquor versus
Yeah.
okay.
Grandma had a room down in the basement that she had a padlock on it. And I remember her taking us down to that room once in a while and say, and if anybody asks what's in here, don't you tell them, she said. And we didn't even know it was in there. But I think it was there still.
Oh. So
Because
they never shared it even with you. They just
No.
said just.
don't you ever tell anybody what's in there. So we kind of figured that's what it was.
When you think about your how many children did your parents have? They had
7.
Were you close to your brothers and sisters?
Well, I just have a brother and sister that was living. The rest all passed away. And we were close. We're quite close.
Did your the ones that passed away, did they die in infancy?
Yes.
As babies?
All of them are stillborn, except one, I think. One girl lived to be 3 days old. And then she passed away, too.
When you think about Alice and Norman are your siblings, then, right? When you think about Alice in your childhood, how would you describe her?
She was a tomboy.
Was she?
Yes. And it seemed like she could do so much more than myself. I had hay fever real bad, so I had to stick around home. And Alice could go out in the field, stuff like that, and drive tractors where I couldn't, you know. And when it came to playing games like baseball, guess who was the top star? Alice. She's still tough that way. I mean, she's gone through so much with that cancer that she's gone through. And still, she's doing much better than Norman and I.
Okay.
She's just
a strong woman.
Strong person.
And how would you describe yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I was always a little bit shy.
Shy?
And afraid to do anything. Where Alice, I mean, she'd do anything. She'd like to do something. I was scared to try out too many things.
What about Norman? What type of person was he when you were growing up?
Well, when we were growing up, we used to fight a lot with him. Because he was a boy and he thought, you know, that boys should be the tough ones and the ones that give directions. And we used to argue with him an awful lot.
But since he was the youngest, you didn't want to let it.
Yeah. And even to this day, it's that way once in a while. We don't actually fight, but we argue. When the three of us get together sometimes, we want to prove something. We actually get the encyclopedias out to improve it.
Boy, that sounds like somebody else I know.
And our kids would sit, kind of laugh at us, the three of us,
Yeah.
And then they'd say, when we'd go for the encyclopedia, oh, there they go again.
Just can't admit you're
Yeah.
wrong at any point. When you were growing up, what was it like on the plains? What was it like? What was the environment like?
Well, it seemed like very cold because the farms, now where I grew up, my folks' farm was on one side of Grandma and Grandpa, and my Uncle Pete's was on the other side of my Grandma and Grandpa.
Okay.
But as far as there was no fences at that time. My folks finally put fences up because it seemed like it was open range.
Okay.
And I know my mother had to, milk the cows and stuff when we were little. And those cows would all of a sudden wander away, miles away. Mom would have to walk and get them, when it was time to milk. And where we grew up, there was a lot of hills. And so there was a lot of coyotes. We were scared of them. I don't think they would have ever hurt us, but maybe if they would have been hungry enough, they would have. Mom says one summertime, when I was a tiny baby, she said the cows were just far ways from home. And she had to take me along. She was scared to leave me alone in the house, and stuff, so she took me along with a buggy. And she says, I just finally couldn't push that buggy anymore. So I parked it on top of a hill where I could see it. And she'd go get the cows and then come back and take us home. It was hard in those days. There was no trees for shade or anything. And
what were the winter months like?
oh, they were quite cold. It seemed like we haven't had a winter like we did in those days. Seems like the winters have gotten warmer.
Okay. What about summer months?
Oh, sometimes we had some pretty hot ones. Now, I was born after I was born during the dirty 30s, so I don't remember too much about it. But I can remember after the sandstorms and stuff like that, say in the early 40s, I can remember some barbed wire fences that were covered up completely with sand. Sometimes all you could see was just a little bit of the post. But what happens is the tumbleweed would get into the wire and then the sand over that, and it would cover them up.
So it's kind of like what you would see with the flooding today, with
Yes.
just the post sticking up.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, but it was sand.
That was sand and dirt. Must have been bad but as far as the dirty 30s, I don't remember too much. It's just the aftermath.
Okay. When you were growing up, what was your favorite time of year? Your favorite season?
I think spring.
Spring? Why is that?
So everything started to bloom, and we had a lot of crocuses out in the pasture, and I loved spring.
Okay. On the farm, what did your house look like when you were growing up?
All it was just a little 2-roomed house, and a front porch on it. And we lived in that until I was maybe about 12 years old.
Okay. How many rooms? It was 2 rooms?
2 rooms.
So all the kids in one, or?
We had just one was a bedroom and one was a kitchen.
Oh, so
And everybody slept in the same bedroom.
Oh, okay. Were there 2 beds or?
3.
3 beds? Mm-hmm. So the girls and then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after I was about, how old did I say, 11, 12? Then the folks moved to a different house on the farm.
Okay.
And then that had an upstairs with 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom downstairs.
Oh, so then the girls had their own room.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What would the family use to heat the house back then?
Coal.
Coal?
Coal, yeah.
Where would they get the coal from?
They'd have to go to town and buy it.
Okay.
Usually from the elevator, I think. That's where they got it.
What type of furniture did your parents have?
Well, in the earlier years, it was a table and a cupboard, chairs, and a stove in the kitchen, and 3 beds, and I can remember kind of a commode or that isn't the right word, I'm sorry. Kind of a closet type thing to hang but it was a piece of furniture.
It was like
Yeah.
something that stood out.
You're right.
Okay.
And then my dad had an organ in that room yet.
So did your dad play the organ?
Yeah, he did. And we kids learned by ear how to play it too.
Yeah, that's right. Alice played us a little tune before we left last week when we interviewed her. That was a treat. I had never seen anybody play the organ before.
Oh, really?
That was a real treat.
Yeah.
What was how often would you guys take baths back then?
Oh, that was in the summertime, almost every day.
Okay.
But we heated our water in a cream can, couple cream cans. We'd set it out in the sun, and that water was so hot sometimes in there that we had to add a little cold or let it set for a while.
Oh my goodness.
From the sun heating it,
Really?
But when we thrashed or summertime dusty, then we always took a bath. But otherwise, it was maybe once a week.
Okay.
And in the wintertime, we heated the water on a stove.
Okay. Interesting.
Wished my parents would have been able to have some of these modern things a little more.
Totally different life
yeah.
today than it was then.
But I'm kind of glad that I lived through those times and now, too, because now I appreciate the modern times a lot more.
Yeah, you have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Did you have any nicknames when you were growing up, or did
Oh,
your family
yeah.
have nicknames?
I had a nickname I never did like. It was Lem, they always called me.
Lem?
It was the first initials from my name.
Okay. How about any of the other kids? Did they have nicknames, Alice or Norma?
Yeah, Alice had a nickname. They called her Muttley.
Muttley?
Muttley, that's German.
Okay.
That's German for Magdalena.
Oh yeah, okay.
And they always called her because she reminded them of Grandma Miller. They called her Muttley.
Did she like that or
No, not especially. But she even gets called that nowadays.
Does she?
Norman calls her that.
Okay. Did Norman have a nickname or?
Little Joe was his nickname.
Why is that one?
My dad's name was Joe.
Okay. You mentioned that your grandparents spoke German in the home. What about your parents at your home? Did you speak German?
We did. And I don't know how we got away from it, but it was after we got married, really. The only time we talked German is when we didn't want the kids to understand what we were saying.
So your kids don't speak German?
No, they don't even understand it at all.
Who did what around the house as far as chores? Who did the cooking, the cleaning?
Well, when we were kids, I had to do a lot of the cooking and stuff because I couldn't go out in the field.
Okay.
And otherwise, my mother always did that.
How old were you when you learned how to cook and you started cooking?
My first cooking, I'll never forget that. I was quite young, maybe about 7, 8. And my Grandpa Miller came out from town and was going to help with the farming. And Mom was out, and we were all out in the field, and Mom sent me and Alice home now to finish those dumplings that she had started in the morning. And she gave us specific instructions how to do it. And I didn't remember the water part.
Oh, no.
And we got home and we started cooking those dumplings. And Alice kept telling me, Mom said to put water in the kettle too. But I says, I don't think you put water, then they'll get soggy, you know. And when those dumplings were done, they were hard and burnt. It's because I didn't remember Mom's telling me the water.
But Alice tried.
Alice tried, yeah.
Did she let you? Did she make fun of you because of that one?
I can't remember anymore. It's just, but I'll never forget that dumpling.
What was it like doing like the wash, doing the laundry back then?
It was hard. My mother's first wash machine was with a gas motor.
Okay.
And you had to be so careful with the gas motor and a wringer type.
Okay.
Because you could get yourself sick or even killed from that gas fumes. And it did, because this thing had a hose on it, the gas part hose, the exhaust, and you stuck it out the window, and sometimes the wind would bring it back in. That was hard. But that was, and then she had to heat her water, of course, and a lot of it she washed by hand on a rubbing board for so it doesn't get the water so dirty, because you washed practically your whole wash in one set of water at that time. You started out with white, and then the next, that isn't so dirty until the last. Yeah,
Oh
it
my
was.
goodness. How about ironing? What was ironing like?
We did a lot of ironing, practically everything.
Okay.
And one thing I can remember my grandmother Camera doing, she would fold her jeans or their overalls real nice, and then she would sit on them. And I asked her once, "What are you doing, Grandma, sitting on those pants?" And she said, "I'm ironing them." That's what she did. She would fold them real nice, and then she would sit on them and get all the wrinkles out of it. Because
I've never heard that before.
Oh, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Because when you hung them on the line, they didn't get real fluffy or anything from, unless there was a breeze.
Okay.
And then they'd get nice and fluffy. Otherwise, they were real wrinkled, and just how they came out of the wringer.
Oh my goodness. When you, in the winter time, when you would hang your clothes out to dry, what would that be like?
That was hard. Your clothes really didn't dry, but they did freeze out a little bit, Sometimes we brought the sheets in, we would fold them as hard, and they were hard, and actually break sometimes. The material would break because they were froze so hard. Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Then you'd hang them around the house, inside the house.
Oh my goodness.
Even in my first years of marriage, we had a rope hanging in the house, and we'd hang it in there to dry.
Huh. Interesting. I know your mom had a garden. Alice had mentioned that. Did you help a lot with the garden?
Yeah, we had to help. I don't know if we helped a lot, but we had to help.
What type of vegetables would she grow in the garden?
Everything. And towards last, I can remember having, which wasn't heard of very often, a big batch of asparagus. Mm-hmm. And we had lots of asparagus at home.
Asparagus when you
I still do. Yeah. We have a patch now that grows. We just finished it for this year. You have to let it grow a little bit into fern, can get a root system for next year. Yeah, and then she had cabbage. She had everything: cabbage, peppers.
So did she do a lot of canning?
Yes, we did a lot of canning at home.
Did you help with that process?
Yeah, that we had to help with canning and pickling and canning meat, because there was no refrigerators. So it was everything or freezers.
So how would you in the summer keep like milk cool or anything like that cool?
Hang it in the well.
Oh, okay.
There was a little rope that we had right by the well, and if we hung milk or cream, those two things most of the time. Okay. Eggs we had in the basement. And that was sold at least, for sure twice a week. We went on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. We'd sell the eggs and the cream.
Okay. Did your father ever help around the house?
No. As far as the house, no. At least I can't remember anything.
what type of, would you do any outdoor
Oh
tasks?
yeah, I
What
had
type
to
would
do.
you do?
Oh, I had to. Sometimes, see, the hay fever, my hay fever was mostly when the ragweed started to bloom. So it was really bad.
Okay.
And then in the fall, the asthma would come. So then I couldn't even lay in bed. I had to practice sit in order to sleep. But, I forgot what you asked me.
What you would do outside?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was stuck with milking and stuff like that mostly.
So did your mom or any doctors ever prescribe any home remedies to help with the hay fever?
Yes,
or the
they
asthma?
did. And they gave me, folks took me to Dr. Stokes in Streeter, and he gave me some pills, and they made me so sleepy that I couldn't even do anything. All I did was sleep. So they finally took the pills away from me.
Okay.
So I didn't have anything else in those days except those pills. And as I grew older, I lost the hay fever.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't have any more of that?
I don't know anymore, unless it's because there's no more ragweed around, which might be it too.
I hope I lose my allergies and stuff. That'd be nice.
Oh, it's no fun to have allergies.
Oh, I get real sick when they're cutting the hay. And,
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the chores that you really disliked when you were growing up? Something that you dreaded doing?
Oh, dear. Oh, when they butchered the pigs. That was a chore. I hated that.
You didn't like doing
It
that?
was such a greasy mess and everything, you know.
How would you help with that?
Oh, I had to help with making all kinds of things with cutting up the meat and stuff like that for sausage and stuff like that.
Did your family have like communal butcherings where they'd invite other people over to help?
Oh, yeah.
Or sausage where they'd
Yeah.
come over and help make sausage and stuff?
Yeah, and that's Reuben's family used to do that a lot.
Okay. Let's see here. Did your parents ever hire you out to a neighbor to go help? No?
I had to do that sometimes, but mostly babysitting
Okay.
is what I had to do.
What was that like back then?
Oh, it was kind of fun, in a way. I liked little kids anyway, and then to see that they get something to eat, and I did sometimes have to cook too for the wife and the husband that was out in the field, you know.
Oh, okay.
Because in those days, if the couple didn't work together, well, they just didn't get any place.
Yeah, you need all the hands you can get.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Was there ever a time in your childhood that your family went on like an outing or a picnic together or any type of?
Oh, yeah. In the earlier years when we lived in California, we did that, I can remember. Us and some more of our relatives would go out into the redwoods, I know, as a picnic when we were out there. And we went down to San Francisco, remember that. And I remember going to the zoo, so we did things then.
Okay. Why did your family move out to California for a couple years?
Well, it was because of the no crops.
Okay.
They had, there was year after year there wasn't any crop. And Dad was going to try and see what California's got to offer. Well, he didn't like that. And they did have a farm in North Dakota yet.
Okay.
So he came back and tried again. And it seemed like after that depression there, a few years there, they had a bumper crop. And that's when Dad made his most money, was those few years after the depression. They had a lot of rain, and his wheat was good, and his grain was good, cattle were good. So I'd say in the 40s,
You
did real well.
Okay. How much land did your father have?
Well, but when he quit farming, he had maybe 6, 8 quarters, something like that.
Okay.
But
he
to
inherit
start,
the land, or did he
no,
purchase
he
the land?
purchased it.
He
He
purchased
inherited only 1/4
it. Okay.
that he to start out with. He got the quarter land.
So was he a grain farmer, or was he dairy, or everything?
Everything. There was grain, there was milking, there's beef cattle and sheep he had and pigs and everything. Ducks, Mom had ducks and geese and chickens and
You name it, you
turkey.
had it.
There was everything.
I saw my first turkey up close the other day.
Oh, really?
One of the interviewees had a turkey, and it came real close to my feet. That was quite a exciting moment.
I think the bird that my mother raised was geese, and they were dangerous when they were hatching and stuff like that because Mom would collect the eggs because she sometimes would set them with a cluck or with a chicken,
Okay.
and she would gather the eggs, and if that gander of the flock of geese would find you or see you taking the eggs, he beat you up so bad. Mom would sometimes have black and blue legs from the wings from the geese, from the gander,
Oh my goodness.
He whipped her good many times.
They're that aggressive.
Yeah,
Oh
they're real bad.
Huh. When you weren't working on the farm, what type of things did you do for pastime activities?
Pastime.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what we did for pastime. Well, we'd get together with the neighbor kids a lot and things like that, but played baseball and stuff.
Were there any board games or card games or
Oh,
things
yeah,
like that?
but for some reason our parents didn't let us play cards.
Oh.
They did. I don't know why. And I think they did themselves because Dad knew how to play cards, but they didn't want us to play cards. So we didn't do that, but we had like checkers and stuff like that. Dominoes we had.
Did your mom and dad ever play with you when you were a kid? Or did they kind of do their own thing?
Yeah, I think they did their own thing. We did ours.
Okay. Where was your favorite place to play when you were a kid? Did you have a favorite little place where you usually go and play?
Well, when we were real little, I mean, whatever you call 10 or so, we did have a favorite place. My dad at one time had a sheep barn, and this was dug into the side of a hill, and then over the top he had straw for a roof, and that thing eventually broke down and got blown away, and that hole was in the ground yet. And Alice and I, we used to go over in that hole that was across the creek. On the other side, we got into mud many, many times and pretend we were playing house in there. We had a stove and we had all kinds of, made our own toys. I'd say that was a favorite place.
Okay. You mentioned having a variety of animals on the farm. Did you have any pets on the farm?
Oh, a dog and cats, yes. We had.
Did the dogs serve dual purposes? Were they used for other things as well?
Yeah, they were used for the cattle and stuff too.
Okay. When you were growing up, did your family have a saying or a short prayer that they would say quite often?
Oh yeah, at our meal time we said a German prayer.
Okay.
It was not in English, but it was in German.
Do you remember it?
I don't remember it. A little bit. A little bit I can remember. No, I can't say it anymore.
Okay. How about, did you grow up with any superstitions or scary stories that stick out in your head that you...
Yeah, I remember when my mother couldn't get us in the house at night to go to bed. She'd always say, "Die Nachtkrab." How would you say that? The night. See, now can't say it again.
I forgot to.
As if a night crow or something will get you.
Okay.
Nachtkrab. Nachtkrab. I can't say it.
Crow.
Yeah.
So the night crow would come and get you.
Yes,
if you
something.
Didn't go to bed.
Yes, something like that.
And that would kind of scare you a little bit.
Yeah.
Huh. You mentioned that you had an organ in your home and that your dad played. And how old were you when you started to learn how to play?
I was quite young.
Quite young.
Yeah, I'd say 8, 7, 8.
Okay. Did anybody in your family play another instrument or?
Well, Norman played guitar and Dad played accordion.
Okay.
And then Alice and I both play accordion.
Do you? Okay. How about singing? Did you ever sing when you were a child?
Alice and I were always singing for something. I don't know if we were that good, but we were asked.
Did you have a favorite song when you were growing up that you really liked, enjoyed singing or hearing?
I liked any song, anything.
Okay.
I liked all kinds of music. I know I liked to listen to the radio so well when I was young, and being I had to stay in and do a lot of housework. We had at that time a radio that just had one of these square batteries inside of it. It's kind of a square. What volt would that be? Anyway, I used to love to listen to music, and I loved to listen to those old German soap operas, or not German, just soap operas that they had.
Okay.
And every once in a while, of course, my folks would come in the house, and here I had that radio on it. They were going to save that battery for when they're in the house. Finally, my dad took the battery and hid it. I didn't get to listen to the radio anymore. Then I tried another trick. I went out the car. We had gotten a Plymouth, pretty new one, and it had a radio in it. I went in the car and I started listening. Well, then I didn't get my work done. And one time I got caught sitting in the car and I forgot to turn it off. And it run Dad's battery down. I never tried the car again after that.
Oh, I bet you he was not exactly
He wasn't happy, no. He wasn't happy.
Oh my goodness. What about hunting? Did you ever go hunting?
I didn't, but Alice did.
Alice did?
Yeah.
Okay.
She went with Dad. She liked to hunt. She liked to do anything that Dad did. She liked to do.
She really was the tomboy.
Yeah,
wasn't
she was. Yeah.
How about fishing?
No, that's one thing we never did.
Okay.
My brother does now. He does a lot of fishing, but then no.
Okay. What religion were you raised?
Lutheran.
Lutheran? Okay. How often did you go to church as a child?
Oh, not very often. Until my mother started to drive. When she learned to drive, then we went more often. But other than that, we didn't go very often.
What type of religious activities did you participate in?
Really nothing.
Okay.
Nothing other than confirmation. Well, that's about the only thing.
What was confirmation like?
Well, for me, it was kind of hard because, I mean, now my grandparents on the camera side, they were very religious, and Grandpa was always got the Bible and was reading it. And there we learned more from there than we did from church, you know, because we weren't in church that often.
Yeah.
And then confirmation, it was so new for me, and I was quite young. I was only 12 years old when I was confirmed, and most of the time they didn't confirm them until they were 14.
Yeah.
And I never had a easy time learning anyway and memorizing and things like that. So confirmation was really hard for me.
Do you remember about how many kids were in your confirmation class?
Yeah, in my class there was 5, 6, 7, 8, about 11.
11?
Mm-hmm.
On the day of confirmation, what would you have to do?
We had to memorize verses and Bible verses and stuff like that. And then they'd ask you questions and you'd have to answer them.
Okay.
And
Did you know the questions ahead of time, or
No,
No?
you didn't.
Okay.
We had to answer 'em. I suppose what they were trying to test us, I suppose, what we learned.
Okay. Um, what, would your parents have like a celebration afterwards
Yes.
for confirmation?
Uh-huh,
What
they
was
did.
that like?
Oh, that was fun because there's a lot of people, a lot of the relatives were there and were visiting and congratulating a person. I thought that was the nicest part of confirmation. The rest was so hard.
Sunday after church, were the dinners different than a typical dinner?
Yeah, being it was a country church that we did go to out at Newdorf, my grandparents only lived maybe about 4 miles away from that country church on my grandma and grandpa camera. And we usually ended up there. If we went to church, we went to grandma and grandpa's. And her dinners were always so good. I can still remember them. Everything, her chicken noodle soup. I can't make chicken noodle soup. And she didn't have no chicken base to enhance it. Like
She just
she
made it real.
made a good chicken noodle soup. And I remember her, another recipe, red rice she called it, Grandma. And it was actually was Spanish rice.
Really?
But she called it red rice. She always had the best stuff.
Huh.
That tasted so good.
Were there things that your parents restricted because of religion that they didn't want you doing?
Oh, like playing cards, I think, was one of them.
Okay.
And I don't think there was anything else that I know of.
When you went through confirmation, was it in German or was it in English?
English.
It was in English. Okay.
Yeah, I never learned German.
Were the church services when you went to church, were they in German or were they in English?
I'm just trying to think. At first they were German.
Okay.
But then as I grew up, like after I was confirmed, that was in English.
Okay.
After all the, can't remember German.
So during your young childhood,
Yeah,
they started
they
to
were
switch over.
German.
Okay. What was a funeral like back then?
It was a lot, people mourned more. It seemed like they were, I mean, a funeral then, it was crying, I mean really crying. And I haven't heard a funeral like that in years, like in the earlier days.
Okay.
I mean, it seemed like they just cried so hard.
Maybe that has something to do with them being so young too, most of the time.
Possibly, yeah.
We were just talking about religion, so I think a good, a new topic to talk about would be holidays. What was your favorite holiday back then?
Oh, at that time it was probably Christmas.
Christmas?
Yeah.
How would you celebrate Christmas?
Oh, we celebrated it either with the grandparents or aunt and uncle or something.
Okay. Okay. Did you have a Christmas tree?
Yes, we did, but it was an artificial one.
Oh, really?
It was not a real one. We never had a real one.
Okay. And how would you decorate a Christmas tree back then?
I can't really remember. I know Mom had some ornaments that she could put on. We didn't have a lot on them.
Okay.
But some people made like popcorn strings. We never did that.
Never did that?
No, we
Okay.
never did.
Huh.
That I can remember.
What about Christmas Eve? Did your family do something special for Christmas Eve?
Go to church, have a Christmas program,
Okay.
and
What was the Christmas program like back then? What types of things would you
mostly little poems, read poems or verses or greetings or something like that. And singing, a lot of singing,
Okay.
old Christmas hymns. But that the congregation would do. We'd sing it.
What about gifts? What would be typical gifts that you would get for Christmas?
Well, we didn't get a lot, I know. I love dolls, and I didn't get my first doll until I was maybe about 7 years old. And dolls, you can probably tell I have a few sitting around here.
They're beautiful.
And Oh, I can remember getting little dishes and paper dolls. I got that. And those were usually from my aunts or somebody that I got those things.
Okay. What about Christmas dinner? What would be a traditional Christmas dinner back then?
I really don't know. Nothing special, really. It was just
Okay.
a good meal.
Good meal, good full meal.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How about Easter?
Yeah, Easter was kind of important. I know at that time, on Good Friday, I know we didn't dare eat any meat. We had to eat something meatless. Like
Okay.
our usual was some kind of we called them kihla, but they were made out of like a donut dough, and then you deep fry them. We would have them, or we would have buttered noodles with fruit, like prunes or raisins,
Okay.
things like that. We could eat on Good Friday, but no meat. And it's changed now.
Yeah.
I think that still comes from the Catholic, tradition.
The Catholics still, I think, practice that for Good Friday.
But our Lutherans, they broke away from the Catholics, so they still so much alike in other ways
Okay.
that they must have kept that tradition.
Do you remember when that tradition kind of died off?
Okay, we still like to do it, Reuben and I.
Do you?
But
Okay.
I don't think very many people do.
Yeah, I was raised Lutheran, and it was something that I was never raised with. Something I didn't even really know of until I came over here because I didn't know a lot of the Catholic religion. So, okay. Huh. What about 4th of July?
Oh yeah, that was a big day. We liked, but we didn't give a lot of money or anything to spend on that day. We got our 50 cents, and that had to last us all day. And at that time, they had rides, those little carnivals. They used to come to town, and 4th of July was always a big day in Gackle until maybe about 20 years ago. Now they don't have it anymore. Have a parade, and the bands would play and stuff like that.
So if you wanted to celebrate 4th of July, say, well, you got the Streeter Centennial this year, but if there wasn't the Centennial this weekend, where would you go for a celebration around here?
We went to Jamestown.
Jamestown?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Did they do something pretty big for
yeah, they usually have a pretty big one, 4th of July.
Okay.
And after Reuben and I were going with each other, we hit Jamestown most of the time. Other than that, was Gackle Parade.
Okay. How about birthdays?
Oh, they come and go, and we didn't really do anything.
Nothing really?
No.
Okay. But different from today?
Yeah, that's good. Today, nowadays, they really celebrate birthdays.
Yes, they do.
Watch it there.
I know it.
You mentioned that as you were growing up, you usually started preparing the meals because your mom would be out in the field. What were some of the regular dishes that you would have to prepare?
Oh, a lot of potatoes and some kind of meat.
Okay.
And in the summertime, when all of us had to go out, Mom usually would open canned.
Canned food.
Yeah,
Okay.
canned food.
When you would have a meal time, would your family sit down at a table together to
Oh,
eat
yeah.
a meal?
Mhm.
Was that a pretty regular
That was
thing?
a regular thing, yeah.
Okay.
Even if Dad would come in 10 o'clock at night, we still had to wait till 10 o'clock at night for supper.
Okay.
That was...
Over dinner time, when you were sitting at the table, was it quiet time, or did you have conversations?
Oh, no, it was mostly quiet. You said talked a little bit probably, but not.
Okay. Okay. What were some of your favorite meals back then?
Same ones that are now too.
Okay.
Oh, German meals. They're still my favorite. Like dumplings or strudel or knäfle, those are still my favorite.
How about least favorite?
Liver sausage. Oh.
I agree.
I'll eat it, but if I have to, and it has to be covered with so much mustard that I can't taste the liver sausage.
That's the way to eat it?
Yeah, that's the only way to eat it.
I tried some liver sausage with just a cracker.
No,
It wasn't for me.
It.
It wasn't for me.
That's my favorite.
Is it your
Yeah,
favorite?
cheese, liver, sausage.
Oh. I mean, I could eat it if I had to, you know.
Yeah.
That,
If that's all I'd
Yep.
get was that, I'd eat it, but please pass the mustard.
What about desserts? What were some of the desserts that you would make back then?
Oh, they used to make a lot of pie. And I mean, it seemed like rhubarb pie was one favorite. And if that wasn't in season, it was apple. That was one dessert that they had a lot of. They had the lard to make the crusts and stuff, and they'd make the best crusts. Nowadays, I don't think people know how to make good crusts, but boy, do you? Well, good for you, I hope.
That's the one dessert he really loves is my homemade apple pie. He says I
Oh.
have the best crust. But see, I learned that from my grandmother.
Oh,
My mom store buys her crust.
oh, because it seemed like the older people knew how to do those things so well.
You've described your family's house. What did the farm look like? What type of buildings were on the farm?
Well, there's is that a hip roof barn that Dad had? Or do you call that? There was a barn and a house, of course, and a chicken coop. And then later in the years, Dad would build another barn and a brooder house, granary, stuff like that. But it was just a little bit every year. They started out with a barn and a house, and an outhouse, of course.
Yeah, that was a must.
Sure.
So did you have a summer kitchen?
Yes, we did.
You did have a summer
Yeah,
kitchen?
after folks moved that bigger house on the farm, then they used this two-roomed house for the summer kitchen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we used it every summer as long as I was home. Because then the big house with the bedrooms in was cool. See, and you did all your cooking. You had to use a range stove, and that would really heat up the house, you know. So that was done in the summer kitchen, so the big house was cool.
So that when everybody came in, they weren't so hot.
And to go to sleep, you know,
Okay.
you could go in there.
Huh.
Or did you ever see Lawrence Welk's place down in
haven't
Strasbourg?
Yet. I haven't yet. We're going over there in July.
Okay.
In July. I'm really
That's
excited.
the way my folks' first house looked. Just
Is it?
exactly like that.
Okay.
It had an outside stairway like that to go upstairs to the attic. Only we didn't use our attic for sleeping, where Lawrence Welk did. And in the inside of Lawrence Welk's house, there are 3 rooms. They divided that one room that we had as a living room. They divided it in 2 rooms, and ours was just 1 room,
Yours
and
was
then
one
one
room.
kitchen.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise, it looks just exactly like the house I lived in when
Is the
first
house
years.
that you lived in still standing?
I don't know. The place that was sold to some different people, and they didn't take good care of the place.
Okay. Streeter was the closest town, right?
Both towns were 15
Oh,
miles.
both towns were okay.
Gackle and Streeter. So we got to go to Gackle a lot and to Streeter a lot. Streeter we went to church, and here we did our shopping.
Alternate.
Yeah.
Okay. What type of equipment did your dad have? Farming equipment.
Well, at first it was mostly for horses.
Okay.
And then he got a tractor. A steam engine, I guess they called it. And that didn't work very good. And then finally he got into like Internationals and Cases or Ellis Chalmers or something like that. He would buy some tractors. But his first ones were horse-drawn.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah, in those days they didn't have to go to gyms for exercise.
Yeah.
They got their own.
Yeah. We've
Yeah.
been talking about that because the German foods, they're so filling.
Uh-huh.
And if you didn't have that work, oh,
Yeah.
you know, you would you would be completely big.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of work that they had to do out there. So
And
they
I
needed those filling foods.
I can remember my mother going out, what we called at that time dragging. I don't know what they'd call it now. But anyway, it was just a real wide piece of machinery. It had spikes on it, would level the ground, the
Okay.
dirt. And she walked behind 4 horses all day long. You know, and then Dad later on got kind of a buggy or a seat or something that you could mount onto this thing.
Okay, so she didn't have to walk,
Yeah,
but she was still
but
out there all
she
day long.
walked that. Yeah, so like I say, they didn't need the gyms in those days.
No kidding, no kidding. So, what were the roads like to your farm?
Oh, they were just cow paths.
Okay.
I mean, just a rut until later years, then Dad got it built up a little bit. But they were still pretty tough to drive in the wintertime. They'd blow shut real easy.
How about at harvest time? Did your dad have like a celebration or attend a celebration after harvest time?
Not in those days. We didn't have anything that I know of.
Okay. When you would go into town, did you ever notice if the town kids had a different feeling towards the farm kids?
Yes, definitely. I don't know why, but we were always thought of as the poor people. And we probably were too, I don't know. But we had, it seemed like the town kids stuck to one, were kind of one-sided, and then us farm kids stuck together too.
Okay. Did you notice that at all with the adults?
No,
That the adults would have that? It was just something with
just
the
the
kids?
kids. I can't remember the adults because a lot of the people were related to us.
So,
So,
okay. When you think back to your childhood, what is a positive aspect of growing up on a farm? What is something that you just think, yes, I'm glad I grew up on a farm because of
well,
that?
I'm glad I did because this way I feel I have the experience of farming and something my kids, I can tell my family because when we went to, that place in Minnesota where they have that farm on Labor Day, what is that? Rolog.
Okay.
We went to Rolog, Minnesota, and they had all these old-fashioned ways to harvest, They had a binder, they had a heather, they had a hay stack where you could make a hay stack and stuff like that. Well, our kids have absolutely no idea what that was. And then we went out and I showed them how to shock. I showed them how to put those shocks together, And I'm glad I had the experience that I can
Okay.
relate it to somebody else.
That's great. How about on the flip side of that, what is a negative experience of growing up on the farm?
Hard work.
Hard
That's
work.
the only thing I can say.
Never ending too, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. What about school? What was school like back then?
Well, country school, it was kind of fun. I don't know, I liked country school really. And we had good teachers. I can only remember one that we didn't learn anything from. We had a good time all year, but we didn't pass. It was Alice and I were in the same grade, and we were 8th graders.
Okay.
And we learned nothing that year. But we had a good time. That's the kind of a teacher she was. But other than that, I really liked it, except that we had to walk to school a lot of times in the cold, cold weather. That was the only thing.
How far was school from your house?
About 2 miles.
Okay. When you think back to your childhood, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be a nurse.
Really?
And I worked in hospitals, so I never became a nurse.
Okay. You went to school in a one-room schoolhouse, right?
Through the 8th grade.
Through the 8th grade. What was that like? How would a teacher give lessons to 8 grades in one room?
And you kind of psyched her out. I mean, once she was teaching the smaller ones, and you just, you didn't even hear her, really. We were busy with our work,
Oh.
so, but.
Would you have homework back then?
No, we did everything in the schoolhouse.
Okay.
I didn't even know what homework was until I was in high school.
What was high school like?
High school was, it was all right, but it was hard for me because my learning abilities were hard.
Okay.
And I don't even know how to explain it. When I read it in a book, or read it, I knew what it meant. But then when it come right down to the nitty-gritty, do you think I could remember when the time came, what I read? That happened real hard. It was kind of a learning disability, I think.
Were you encouraged by your parents to go to high school?
Not really. Dad didn't want us to go to high school.
Okay.
But my mother said, that's okay, it's fine with her. And we wanted to go too, Alice and I. And Dad, just for some reason, thought we should work on the farm.
Needed the extra hands?
Yeah, he needed. Norman never did go to high school then.
Really? Okay. So he stayed back and worked on the farm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. When you would go to grade school, what would you bring for lunch?
Oh, okay. We usually had a syrup, a gallon pail. That was our lunch bucket.
Okay.
And it was either peanut butter and jelly, or just plain jelly sandwiches, or fried egg sandwiches. I can remember that.
Okay.
And very seldom we had any fruit.
Okay.
But then we did get some fruit, I don't know what it was called, kind of a supplement from the government for the schools.
Oh, okay.
And some schools divided it between the families and gave it to them at home. But our school kept it right in school. And then, like canned fruit she had for us sometimes. There were very seldom fresh fruit because the schoolhouse would get very, very cold.
Okay.
You know,
So they
there
wanted
were,
to keep.
yeah, it wouldn't keep it. It had to be canned.
Okay.
So we got canned fruit and canned milk and things like that.
Okay.
But our sandwiches were usually jelly and peanut butter. Very seldom peanut butter because that was expensive,
But the jelly your mom would
Made
present
egg,
to you.
yeah.
Okay.
And fried egg sandwiches. And they were good because we were very hungry.
What about noon hour? What was noon hour or recess hours like?
Then we played. We had a lot of fun.
Okay.
And one teacher of ours was especially, I don't know, she was so creative in so many ways. She stands out amongst all of them. In the wintertime, she would go out with us and she would actually build forts, with snow blocks. She showed us how to do it, and of course the boys did it. And,
Oh my goodness.
and we had an igloo. I remember that so well. And in the inside, if we couldn't go out to play, she set up a grocery store. And she had us bring all empty boxes or empty cans, have the cans opened at the bottom, so that when she set them upright, they looked like in a store,
Oh my goodness.
She was so creative. Oh, she
Really?
just stands out in my mind.
And do you remember her name?
Uh-huh.
What was that?
At that time it was Betty Singer,
Betty Singer.
but now she is Betty Anderson.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
That's a great.
She
I
was-
haven't heard a teacher that has done something
Yeah,
so.
she was so good in so many ways.
Oh. So when you were going to school, what was your favorite subject?
Arithmetic.
Arithmetic?
Hmm.
What was your least favorite subject?
Oh, English.
English?
To this day, can't understand it. Some of it.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. One last topic, and then we'll do some concluding questions. What about clothing? Did your mom make most of your
A
clothes?
lot of them.
Okay.
A lot of them. She was a good seamstress.
Where would she get the fabric from?
Oh, that she could buy in town.
Okay.
Yeah, by the yard.
Okay.
We had a clothing store in town here a long time ago, and they had good material and stuff like that. Yardage, you know.
Would she ever order any fabrics from catalogs?
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Do you remember what catalogs?
Mostly Montgomery Ward and Sears Roebuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about a spinning wheel? Did you have a spinning wheel?
We didn't. My grandma Miller did.
Okay.
And when I was always hoping to inherit that, but I didn't. Had bid on it at the auction sale, but that was nice. She brought that, the great grandma Miller brought it from Russia, or file, I should say. Yeah.
So where did it end up?
And well, she ended up with it. Grandma did.
Okay. That's
It was her mother's.
What about reusing old clothes?
Yeah, we had to share. Alice and I had to share clothes too a lot of times. And Mom would even redo a lot of old things, you know, that she got from her sisters or something like that. She would make them over.
Okay. When you think back to your childhood, and ask a couple of concluding questions. When you think back to your childhood, what was one of the most stressful times in your childhood?
You know, I can't even think of anything right now.
Okay.
I remember having my tonsils out at one time, and the folks took me to Jamestown and left me at my aunt and uncle's and went back home. And I remember me thinking, you know, they'd left me all alone. But my aunt and uncle took me up to the hospital, and
How long?
there was nobody there that I know of with me at the time. I was scary.
Oh, I can imagine. How long were you at the hospital for?
I would say 3 days they kept me in at that time.
How about a happy memory? What's one of your happiest memories from your childhood?
I think the happiest memory I remember is when my mom came home from the hospital in California, because we thought that we didn't have a mom anymore. She was gone so long. I think that was the happiest time I can remember.
It sounds like it'd be a relief for the children to have. What about adventurous? Did you ever do anything adventurous as a child? What would be the most adventurous thing?
Like I say, I was always a little chicken with doing anything. Now, you ask Alice that, and I bet she had an answer for you. Really? I'm just trying to think. I guess I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. And then, is there anything else about your childhood that you would like to share with us today?
Well, I think we pretty well covered everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, why do you think it's important to record your history?
Oh, I think the younger people, you know, like I say, my generation has gone from horses to tractors and mega tractor. So I think our children wouldn't even realize what we really had to go through unless we record it in some way. Because No, I don't think they're. I mean, they have. I don't think I don't know how the world will be 20 years from now. How it can get any bigger as far as machinery and stuff for farm people
Yeah.
can get, but
But it's changed a lot in your
it's
lifetime.
changed. Yeah, it's changed. Big changes.